Hi, good friends. I missed you yesterday because I didn't do a recording. I decided to sleep in the whole day because I wanted to just process the quarantine protocols. And I'm glad I did because I woke up this morning feeling at home and a lot more refreshed. So I hope that you wouldn't mind. So before we continue on with today's crisis journey theme, I wanted to quickly introduce you to the jewelry that I have on. So as you can see, I've got my PNG Kinacell, and then I've got my PNG flag earrings. These are basically handcrafted by our local arts and crafts men and women. And what I'm doing is trying to sell some of their products online so that we can promote our PNG local arts and crafts, as well as support our local talents to generate some income. Why not? We should support them to get some money into their pockets. And so I would just encourage you to please share the products with your networks as well as place your orders. I've got them on my social media page. So please place your orders and promote the product so we can support our local talents. Thank you for doing that. Now, today on our crisis journey theme, I wanted to cover social class. You could be thinking, oh, this sounds really fancy and academic, but no, I'm just trying to share my own experience. I acknowledge the fact that you have your own views and your own perspectives and your own definitions about social class, and that's well and good. Now, this morning I was just pondering on what to share with you, and what intrigued me about social class with Scott Fitzgerald's novel published in the 1920s, I think 1925. It's called The Great Gatsby, and I'm sure that most of you have read this novel. He actually writes about the American way of life in the 1920s, and he covers a lot of themes, including inequality and capitalism and power and poverty and all of those things. But interestingly, he explores in depth social class, and he categorizes his characters into three different categories. And it's interesting, the first category that he mentions is people with old money. Now, he uses the term old money to describe people who have become rich because they've inherited wealth from their families. And then the second category or characters that he described are people with new money. Basically, people have worked hard and they have been successful in accumulating wealth. And then the third group of people in his characters, he describes people with no money. So basically, what that means is those people who don't have old money or new money comes under no money. So that was quite interesting, and I was thinking, okay, this is quite interesting, and I was trying to reflect in our own cultural context or in our own social context in PNG, where we have the educated and the elite and those who probably can find some form of employment living in the cities and even the squatter settlements in the growing urban cities. But then about over 87% of our population are actually based in the rural sector. So basically they are dependent on agriculture and subsistence livelihood, and people have land. They depend on the natural environment for sustenance. Maybe they don't need money. They do need money for school fees and other basic needs like soap and clothing and all this, but generally people are happy and they live simple lives, and we know that. I'm not here to talk about poverty, so just to give you a little bit of context as to what Fitzgerald is talking about in his novel. Now, I want to reiterate the social class theme, and I want to share my experience during this crisis journey. Now, I've seen funerals being held in Port Moresby and in the village. We have this culture where funeral and mourning have become a significant social and cultural event. What I mean by that is because we spend a lot of money, a lot of pigs, a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of emotion on mourning, on planning how to bury our dead, and all of that. Okay. We have what we call removal of the house cry at the end of the funeral, when we are actually putting the body in the grave, and then we do big killing, or we make a feast just to honor the relative or the person that has passed. And I've watched this very closely because something interesting takes place. Now, during the funeral and the collection of the money or the donations towards the funeral expenses, someone probably with old money or new money comes and gives significant amount of money, or it could be pigs. They come and give a huge pig, compared to someone with no money. They give nothing, or maybe only 0.0% of what the people with old and new money have given them. And then at the time of the feast, to farewell the body, the pig killing or the feast is done, and then the best part of the feast is given to the people who donated more. So that the priority goes to the people who donated more or significant amount of money or pig, compared to the one that contributed the least. Okay, just bear that in mind. I'll give you another example. When I was going through this crisis in the village, my entire village is now homeless because all of the houses have been lawlessly burnt to the ground. Food gardens have been destroyed completely. Businesses, timbers, poultry have been all destroyed and burnt to the ground. So that men, women, and children, old and young, they are living in caves at the moment for the last 4 or so months. When I went to the village, I wanted to check in at my friend's house so I could stay with them. And my friend said, "Oh, you can't stay here now." I wouldn't call them my friend. Sorry, I spoke about friendships yesterday. Well, this is sort of my friend. So I checked in, and then she said, "Oh, you can't stay here." She said, "Oh, I also told the same thing to your father. He came here with his belongings, and I chased him out, and I locked the gate because I don't want him to come into my house." And then she said, "The same thing applies to you. You can't stay in my house." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Oh, my house could get burnt, and I don't want to see that." And then it made me think, oh, okay. Then I realized that someone in my family actually inevitably got into this huge historical crisis, and then me, all my siblings, and all of my family members, we were part of this big trouble. This was a serious trouble. And then the people who would normally accommodate me, they would isolate themselves from me now, because if I stayed at their place, the people, the opponents, they are going to come and destroy them. So now they can no longer be my friends, or they can no longer do the things that they would have done if there wasn't any trouble. So I said, "Oh, okay." So I left. I took my belongings and I left, and I stayed with my mom and my other siblings in the cave for about 5 weeks. So the message here is the way that we behave. The way that we behave in a given situation is structured by the way that society expects us to behave. Okay, when we behave in compliance with the expectations of the society, we create a social class. We create a social class ourselves. So we categorize people by a given situation. We categorize people as troublemakers, even though one person in the family was involved in a crisis or in a crime or in a trouble or in an unacceptable social behavior, then we include all of the entire family and the siblings and the relatives with him and say that all of them are troublemakers and we don't want to associate with them. We can never associate with them because they all are troublemakers. If we do, society is going to blame and shame us just the way that they will blame and shame them. Okay. At the funeral, the poor person is given the least priority and the least of the feast. And the person who is considered to be wealthy or more educated or who contributed more is given the highest priority, meaning that we are creating a social class ourselves. We create the social class ourselves. We talk about inequality. We talk about inequality and say women are least citizens because this is what society establishes. But we women, we buy into that. We buy into that mentality. We sit in the bus and we give the men priority seat and we sit on the floor. Aren't we creating social class by ourselves? We don't want to stand up and be different. Now, with my experience in the village, the person with the accommodation, she had every right to chase me out, to lock me out. I have no problem with that. I respect that. That's an ultimate right and I respect that. My problem is that the dynamics of the way that we are behaving in our society and in our culture is framed by the expectations of other people, expectations of the wider society. We cannot stand up and say that this is wrong or this is immoral. We cannot stand up and say this is immoral or this is wrong or this is creating inequality or this is creating a class system which is disadvantaging other people and advantaging the advantaged, well-advantaged. We cannot stand up and be different and say no because we buy into the expectations of the society. That is why we will never change. That is why we cannot change. We need to change the way that society frames the way that we think and the way that we behave so that we are doing things differently now. My friends, I'm sure that some of you will have controversial views about what I'm talking about, and I will welcome all of that. But to be honest with you, I do not accept the way that we create social class in our own community or within our own family. Social class in terms of the haves and the have-nots, the educated and the ignorant, the genders, the age. I do not believe that we should create social class and inequality amongst ourselves only because society expects us to do so. We need to break through these expectations, and we need to think and behave differently so that we can bring on that change that we all need. Thank you so much. Please share and comment on my videos, and please make them popular, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.